This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
Next on the 5 o'clock report.
That's the first I could say I've been hit by a roof.
Dramatic implications for future public education across the country.
It would be a lot easier to not get up here and talk about political things. But we are the church, and we must stand for truth. And when the truth of God is being defied, we must call it out.
Now, let's go to the newsroom.
Good afternoon and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish. It could be 5 to 7 days before the lights are back on for some 352,000 people in western Pennsylvania.
This is an unprecedented event in the history of Duquesne Light Company.
John Hildebrand is the vice president of operations for Duquesne Light, the main power provider in western PA.
I've been in the utility business for 40 years. This is one of the top 3 events in my 40-year history.
It all started with a storm on Tuesday, hurricane-force winds, hail, and a 40-degree temperature drop.
I just saw this roof just flying. I thought it was actually the front of a building.
That's the first I could say I've been hit by a roof.
The phones lighting up for help at the 911 center in Pittsburgh.
Between 5 and 6 o'clock last night, they had 5,000 911 calls. They're saying in 1 minute alone, up to 1,000 911 calls. So the devastation, just catastrophic across all of southwestern Pennsylvania.
The city of Pittsburgh held a press conference this morning warning it's still not safe to be outside with thousands of downed power lines and trees.
People of our great city, last night was a terrible storm, and it impacted our city in ways that we never want to see it impact. And what I ask everybody today, if you can stay in your house, please do so.
The strongest wind gusts were clocked at over 80 miles an hour. The U.S. Supreme Court has taken up yet another significant religious freedom case. Today, they heard arguments on what could be the nation's first taxpayer-funded religious charter school. CBS's Jan Crawford.
This case will have dramatic implications for future public education across the country if these kind of charter schools can operate.
James Campbell is the charter school's attorney in Oklahoma.
This court has held 3 times in the last 8 years that when a state creates a public program and invites private actors, it can't exclude people or groups because they're religious.
Legal analyst Jessica Levinson.
Here we have in Oklahoma people who want to set up the nation's first online Catholic school that would be a charter school, direct federal funding. And the question is, does that violate the Establishment Clause, or does not allowing that actually violate some people's free exercise clause rights? It's a real tension between those two clauses.
A decision is expected in June. The White House cabinet met over your lunch today to discuss Donald Trump's first 100 days in office. OMB Director Russ Vought says Trump's cutting of regulatory red tape is saving each American family thousands of dollars.
When you came into office, you basically stopped $200 billion in costs to American families just by stopping the Biden regulatory agenda. That's about $2,000 per family. We think when we're going to hit these 10-for-1 goals that we could be in the neighborhood of about $900 billion in savings to American families.
Trump also working to make tips non-taxable. Business analyst Andre Gutierrez.
Right now, there are employers across the country that if you're a tip worker, they can pay you as low as $2.13 with the hope that you're going to make enough money with tips to make up the rest of your income.
The White House is close to signing a minerals deal with Ukraine. CBS reporter Weiji Zhang.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did post on social media with a few details. He said it would be signed in the next 24 hours.
There's a dangerous wildfire burning in Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says it could reach Jerusalem. The BBC's Debbie Ross.
The Defence Minister has declared the situation a national emergency. More than 100 firefighting teams, including army units, have been drafted drafted in to tackle the blazes. International assistance has also been requested.
The fires shut down the main highway between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Saigon fell 50 years ago today.
For most of those who wanted to leave their country, this would be their last chance.
The event closed the curtain on the long and tumultuous Vietnam War. Here's how Dan Rather covered the fall of Saigon on the CBS Evening News, April 30th, 1975.
South Vietnam now is under communist control. Communist tanks smashed through the heavy gates of the presidential palace. The surrender came just 4 hours after the last Americans were pulled out of Saigon.
The South Vietnamese capital, now called Ho Chi Minh City, was captured by North Vietnam's Communist Army after the American military evacuated the U.S. Embassy. And a bill to keep your eye on out of Colorado, House Bill 1312, would make it illegal to refer to someone by other than their preferred pronoun. In fact, using their birth name could be construed as coercive control in child custody cases. State Democrat Yara Zokai defends the pro-transgender bill.
As Colorado is increasingly viewed as a refuge for trans and queer folks, this bill will protect parents from states that are increasingly criminalizing the very act of seeing your child for who they are.
But Christians around the state are rallying against it, including Pastor Mike Patrick, who told church members,
it would be a lot easier to not get up here and talk about political things. But we are the church, and we must stand for truth. And when the truth of God is being defied, we must call it out. And my job here as a pastor is to tell you what is true, right, and good from the Word of God.
Brent Leatherwood, president of the Southern Baptist Convention's Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, tells CBN the bill would harm children.
The state should be using its authority for good and to restrain evil. And this legislation, I would say it actually seeks to codify evil. And that's wrong.
That bill looking favorable before the Democrat-controlled state Senate, and the governor there says he will sign the measure if it passes. Still to come on the 5 o'clock report, New York got hit with those storms Tuesday, too. Doctor-assisted suicide passes the Empire State Assembly, and Real ID is really a week away. Those stories after weather with Kevin Williams.
Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The call for tonight, clear to partly cloudy, clouding up late near Lake Erie and up through Niagara as well. Low temperatures, 30s in central New York, and mainly low to mid-40s elsewhere. For tomorrow, some sunshine to start, clouding up. Showers and rumbles reach areas near Lake Erie earlier in the day, then spread east by night. High temps mid-60s to mid-70s. Some leftover showers and rumbles on Friday, spreading east, and then temperatures on Friday reaching the mid-60s to the middle 70s.
Thank you, Kevin. Checking the stories making news where you live across New York and Pennsylvania. Back to our top story. 1/3 people in the dark in the Keystone State. New York still has a good 6,000 without power from yesterday's storms.
There's trees down everywhere.
The village of Warsaw in western New York got hit especially hard. Laura DeBatz tells WIVB it was raining cats and dogs.
I could tell from all of the plant life in the middle of the road that just budded that it definitely came down hard.
Warsaw resident Michael Schmidt says golf ball-sized hail made it look like it was snowing.
I've never experienced hail like that before. A little bit of pea size or something like that, but nothing like that. I was not going out of the garage, you know.
Both the middle and high schools in Warsaw had to close today due to storm damage. The New York Assembly has passed a medical aid in dying bill. It allows the terminally ill to kill themselves with the help of a doctor. New York has tried for over a decade to approve physician-assisted suicide. The measure now heads to the Senate for consideration. New York may have a budget, but there are still many outstanding items needing to be resolved. Unresolved is the formula needed for doling out school aid, as well as how New York will settle the staffing crisis at state prisons. Governor Hochul says that 3-week prison guard strike cost New York $700 million.
We're still paying for in extraordinary numbers every month because thousands of workers walked off their jobs.
Those workers walked off the job to protest working conditions inside state prisons. The governor fired thousands of corrections officers, leading to a staffing crisis across the state. The Real ID deadline is 1 week from today. On May 7th, a standard license will no longer be valid to fly within these United States. Correspondent Chris Van Cleve.
In 30 states, fewer than 70% of eligible residents have a Real ID. In
17 states, the compliance rate is less than half.
Anyone 18 and up must have a real ID, enhanced ID, or a passport to board a flight without delay. If you don't have a real ID or a passport, be prepared. You could be selected for extra screening.
For passengers who don't have the real ID, how much extra time will the screening take?
At least 30 minutes on top of the 2 hours that we ask passengers to show up at this time.
To get a real ID, you'll need to make an appointment with your local DMV, and that can take weeks. And the world-famous Maid of the Mist begins operations tomorrow at Niagara Falls. More from Family Life's Dee Haley.
The season is scheduled to run from May 1st through November 2nd. The Maid of the Mist features 2 all-electric, zero-emission vessels that were the first of their kind in North America when they were placed into service in 2020. Tours depart every 30 minutes, Monday through Friday, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. on weekends. Hours of operation will be extended throughout the summer. Ticket information is available at maidofthemist.com. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
And next at 5, the dumbing down of Americans through devices. Let's listen in.
Are we getting dumber? That's the topic today on Real Answers. It's a regular Wednesday feature. We talk about the issues that matter to families with licensed mental health counselor Christopher Anderson. Welcome back, Chris.
Good to be here, Mark.
Always good to have you. Well, we have a certain age. We know the exasperation of, say, walking into a room and having no clue what it is we came in there for. But new data out that seems to indicate that regardless of age, human cognitive abilities seem to be trending downward. That's kind of scary.
It's not entirely surprising. The amount of time that has been spent online since really the internet really got cranking, and especially now with all these apps, it really has a proportionate increase to our decline. So it's not too hard to figure out what's going on here.
No, for sure. I coached some youth baseball back in the day. Even back then, and that's was kind of around the beginning of smartphones really starting to show up. But I noticed that just in kids, just couldn't focus. I mean, baseball is a game where you just kind of got to stand there and pay attention, and they couldn't. They just can't. Some of that's just little kid stuff, but it was a trend too. Even before smartphones, watching TV, whatever, instant everything. They need instant everything and couldn't focus. And we're starting to see that all over the spectrum of society.
And if you look at what has happened to our education system as a whole in the United States, I mean, back in the day, we'll say even only 2 generations ago, we were near the top, if not at the top, in terms of quality of education in the world. And now we're hovering right around 35 in the world. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked about that. But like you were saying, you're both coaching little kids, and especially nowadays, these kids are growing up with screens. They're growing up with instant this, instant that, instant. Everything is instant.
Yeah.
To the point where children are no longer expected out of necessity to have to learn to be patient and have to be able to focus for any length of time because everything is so instant.
It's just so pervasive. They see it in adults now. I guess that generation has grown up and they stay that way.
The numbers of adults that are claiming to have, we'll call it adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, those numbers are way up.
That's licensed Christian counselor Chris Anderson. We've got several more minutes of the Real Answers feature online as a podcast. You can subscribe, listen to, and share it at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or at familylife.org.
Don't forget what the Lord has done. Hi, I'm Rob West with a Faith and Finance Minute. God made a way for the Israelites to leave Egypt, where they'd been in slavery for centuries. He even parted the Red Sea to rescue them. But before long, the Israelites were complaining. Rather than humbly asking God in faith to provide for their needs, they complained. It's easy to be critical of the Israelites, but we're very much like them. God has provided for each of us in marvelous ways, and yet, like the Israelites, we're more apt to complain about our current situation than to trust. So today, choose gratitude over grumbling. Trust that the same God who has provided for you in the past will continue to meet your needs. He is faithful yesterday, today, and forever. Get biblical answers to your financial questions in the Faith Fi community. Download Faith Fi, Faith and Finance in your app store or visit faithfi.com.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock report, what is the strangest animal that you've seen in the street? We got a good one for you coming up after weather.
I'm Kevin Williams, and here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. A chilly, dry night is ahead, and a warmer day is due tomorrow. However, showers and rumbles come in later in the day and at night. This as the next front approaches the area. front does not look nearly as potent as the one that came through yesterday and last night. The call for tonight, clear to partly cloudy, clouding up late near Lake Erie and up through Niagara as well. Low temperatures, 30s in central New York, and mainly low to mid-40s elsewhere for tomorrow. Some sunshine to start, clouding up. Showers and rumbles reach areas near Lake Erie earlier in the day, then spread east by night. High temps mid-60s to mid-70s. Some leftover showers and rumbles on Friday, spreading east, and then temperatures on Friday reaching the mid-60s to the middle 70s.
Thank you, Kevin. Finally at 5, it was a scene from down under, down south. Here's Family Life's Mark Webster.
There's a kangaroo hopping down the road.
Yeah, in, of all places, Alabama.
Tie the kangaroo down.
Now, they didn't have to tie this one down, but sheriff's deputies and animal control officers did have quite a chase down an Alabama highway when a kangaroo on the loose eluded them for a while, at least until a tranquilizer dart did its job and the suddenly sleepy roo settled down under a tree for an unplanned nap, allowing bemused officers to return him to his owner, leaving him relieved and the local sheriff shaking his head.
Wow, a kangaroo fella in Tuskegee, Alabama. We see a little bit of everything here.
Mark Webster, Family Life News.
That's the world that we live in for Wednesday, the 30th of April. I'm Sarah Harnish, and this is the 5 o'clock report on Family Life.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.